Welcome to A Stab in the Dark, a horror movie podcast. We're talking about this week Cannibal Holocaust. What a cheerful film we're covering this week. As always, I'm joined by Mike.
That's me.
Roger.
Rogero.
And Dave Adato.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yes, Dave.
Yep.
Hello.
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 Welcome, one and all, as we talk about...
To the circus.
Yeah, the circus of Cannibal Holocaust. Wow, it's a very interesting film. And off the bat, I want to get both of your sort of assessments, just a quick few sentences. Sum up Cannibal Holocaust for us, Dave, your opinion.
So it's time to go deep into themes, yeah? Right now?
Yeah. Don't jump the gun,
No.
as you're well known to do.
Okay.
Go on.
It's a tough watch, but I do like it. I like it a lot less than I thought I did.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But, you know, in like the kind of big list of famous video nasties, this makes the very short list of those that I would recommend that people watch.
Yeah. You're talking about extreme movies.
Yeah,
clarify. Because video nasties includes like Evil Dead and stuff.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, so like the worst of the worst.
Yeah, your Serbian films and Salo
yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah, there's a very small number that I would recommend, and this is one, like with a lot of asterisks, you know what I mean, and caveats. But I do think it's worth watching, and any movie fan or any horror fan or any masochist, I guess, that's interested in watching it,
or sadist.
Should go. Anyway, well, we're not encouraging that. I'm not encouraging that.
Carry on.
So I think it has something to say. I think it's not very smart about making that point. It's pretty blunt, which is okay. But I mean, I think we
Wouldn't
could
agree,
give.
but interesting.
We could give it's incredibly blunt. What are you talking about?
What you talking about?
What you talking about? So it could give the audience a bit more credit, maybe. But and there's some hypocrisy surrounding like the making of as well, which I have a problem with. But overall, I think it's interesting and worth a watch.
I love this movie. I think it's one of the best horror movies of all time, in my personal view. Obviously, there's only one asterisk for me, which is the animal abuse scenes, which shouldn't have ever been did not love.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be loved. I mean, as I was saying to you, right? I'm happy for those scenes to be in the movie when they're making the movie, but do it with practical effects. You don't actually butcher a turtle. You don't actually kill these animals. They demonstrated that they could do good practical effects in the movie towards the end. So I don't know whether, presumably for budget reasons or just because they didn't give a shit, they used actual animals. So that's a problem. But outside of that, I think this movie is brilliant. It pioneered found footage. It's pretty much, in my opinion, the best exploitation movie, the best cannibal movie, if that's a genre. It's very well directed. I think it's not fun, but as far as extreme movies go, this is the top of quality.
I wouldn't say that.
The soundtrack is great. The fact that it's still brutal today, as much as it was, if not more so than 1980, something has to be said for the quality of the movie making for that to be true. The effects are still believable. And the way it disguises the effects and the low budget with the found footage is something that has been used and aped going forward since Blair Witch. I think it's just brilliant. I think it's an absolute classic of the genre, and I think it's a shame that those scenes are in the movie, and because of those scenes being in the movie, people judge the movie as immoral and therefore can't be good, would be my stance.
And how about you, Joe? Because this is your first time watching it. Tell us, Joe, what do you think?
What do you think, Joe?
This is your first time watching it, right, for this, yeah.
Yeah, I had never watched it before.
What had you heard about it? Have you heard anything?
Nothing.
Okay,
nothing at all.
Okay.
Nothing at all?
Nothing at all.
Stupid sexy cannibals. Problematic. Yeah, I reckon for me, I'd never seen it before. My first time watching it was specifically for this podcast, and I've heard only you two talk about it when we've done our previous Hits and Misses podcast, which we opened with, and you were talking about found footage horror, and we sort of talked about that.
Yep.
Yeah, I think this movie might be in a way more relevant today than it was at the time it was made. If you look at where it came from and the ideas behind it in the production and the directing, it's kind of stemming from the idea of war and what is suitable for TV, what isn't suitable for TV, censorship issues. And I think a lot of that still, if not more so, with all the wars happening now, which could spread and lead to a much bigger thing.
And manipulatory filmmaking as well. Yeah.
And, I've heard from lots of people online, from you two, that how kind of ghastly this movie is, and I was like, well, I'm walking into something here. That's my version of the Blu-ray I bought secondhand from CEX, and the guy who served me hasn't seen it, but when I took it up to him to pay for it, he went, ooh, you buying that?
It's got that kind of mystique.
It's got an aura. It always makes those lists.
You can always tell, when someone hasn't watched it as well. Like, they've heard about it, but they haven't watched it, and you get reactions.
Yeah,
like
which
that.
is often a point, right?
Yeah,
things are always worse in your head when you
exactly.
read the script or plot points for this movie or Serbian film. You think it's like literally the worst thing you could possibly put your eyes through. Like it's only shown on Live Leak or something. Yeah. But it's not that bad.
Yeah, and I watched it.
It's worth watching.
It is definitely worth watching. I wouldn't go back to it very often. I would rewatch it. And I do
You have to be in a certain mood to rewatch it,
I do think it's problematic, but I think it's a masterpiece.
Oh, right. You're on the mic camp.
Yeah. And I'm not a big fan of too much gory horror. I'm not really a fan of rape within movies, but for some reason, this film I'm able to...
It's whether it demands...
Yeah.
Whether it has its place in the movie.
Yeah, and I think the subject matter is so realistic that you cannot shy away from the fact this stuff really does happen, and it has happened, and it will continue to happen. So I think it makes a very valid point and will continue to do so and age incredibly well because of that. The only thing which I think we've already echoed is that there's no way on earth they should be killing animals for this film, but that is from a 2024 point of view, right?
Even in 1980, that was a no-go. I could believe that wholeheartedly if it was from the 20s or maybe even the 30s. But even in 1980, people wanted to protect animals. People
there was a furor about Apocalypse Now, right? Killing animals too around this time.
Correct. Because that has a similar scene.
Yeah.
But more justifiable purely because they recorded what the native people were doing, and therefore, the animal was going to die anyway, and it wasn't purely for entertainment purposes. Whereas in this movie, you can't say the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So let's do a little review of this film. Let's go over the plot just a little bit and see what we can find as we go into it. Maybe
as we go into the jungle.
As we go into the jungle.
Yeah. The mighty jungle.
And maybe we'll find a video tone
for this video.
Is it not Lion King related?
And boys and girls, what are we going to find?
Yeah, the boys and girls shouldn't be there.
Raped, eating corpses.
Yeah. Yes, they probably will. So, it's 1979. The American film crew disappears in the Amazon while filming The Green Inferno, which will be their latest release on American TV. You've got director Alan Yates, scriptwriter Faye Daniels, two cameramen, Jack Anders and Mark Tommaso. And they go missing. So then you've got the idea of this other character, Harold Monroe, who's an anthropologist in New York University, agrees to lead the mission, the rescue, and that's where we start. So the first act of the film.
Yeah, and it's presented in quite a realistic manner with news segments and kind of like almost behind the scenes-y kind of chatters about this going on. So, I mean, even in 2024, I would argue it's believable realism. It's, if I didn't know better, maybe I could walk in there and think that they're talking about a real bunch of people that went missing.
Yeah,
it's a very effective recreation of like a documentary opening, right? Yeah, there's and I found like the setup of that, essentially the central mystery of like the whole film basically is what happened to them, and it's set up very quickly, and I found it quite compelling. I did notice, that they're talking about they got like a newscaster talking about like cannibal tribes, like savages, while the camera's showing like built up New York, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I know what they're saying here, right? It's about our perception of being savage and how we're so
Yeah, but that's on the rewatch, right? That's subtext. That's definite subtext.
No, but it's there though. It's there.
Also, one of the first scenes,
hammering it home.
No. Well, I mean, there's plenty of that to come. I'm just saying that that's the nice subtle stuff, right at the beginning.
One of the first things we see is one of these cannibal tribesmen like eating something, and it's part of the opening sequence.
Well, you see the army first of all being savages, right? And they shoot people for no reason whatsoever. You do see them munching on bones
munching
and
just
so
before then the army.
There's actually like so the reason that the army is shooting them, so the Yakumo tribe, is that they specifically were preparing for the professor to arrive, and they wanted to capture one to be a guide. That's why they did that. So they, the military were planning ahead to get a guide for the professor.
Yeah.
And supposedly and it's said very briefly in the dialogue, the Yakumo tribe is not traditionally a cannibalistic tribe, but they are eating human remains, I believe. And it's because they want to ward off basically like the bad energy of what the documentary crew did. But
the foreigners, the intruders,
but that's the whole thing. Like literally, like because of the three tribes, they're like the most peaceful one, right? They're the first one that we meet. But they're literally their very first presentation is them committing cannibalism, right? Basically, giving the audience what you want, and already kind of setting that tone for how they're going to be presented.
I think it's a good point.
It's also setting up the inversion, though, right?
Yes.
What you say?
I think it's a good point in this moment in history when this was made in 1979. Mass globalization hadn't quite taken off in the same way it does now. We didn't have access as a humanity to go anywhere in the world and put it on social media a day later. There was none of this. So these films that were made in the Amazon and then put on screen for a Western audience, they are somewhat documentary nature in how they're going to be perceived. When you put it to that audience, there's something taboo about it. There's something that they can watch, something otherworldly, and there's this almost like it's the freak show element that you want to see something that isn't.
This is the Mondo documentary aspect to it, right? It's like
which was popularized in the 60s and continued to this.
Like the sensationalism of like taboo subjects that people, it's like watching true crime, like where you're horrified but can't look away. It's like that kind of thing.
But also very influenced by colonialism, because we only just basically in 1980 we'd only had 20 years maybe of colonialism kind of dying its death. Like India was separate from the British Empire in the 50s and so on.
Vietnam. Vietnam was colonized by the French, and then the Japanese came in at the end of the Second World War, and then the French tried to retake it. They had a war 10 years this went on for before then the Americans tried to do the same to Vietnam, and then the Chinese also tried to do that to Vietnam. So it hadn't gone away, and this is now when the Chinese end up invading northern Vietnam, coming through Sapa. In that time, it's late 70s now, because they came in straight after the Americans left in the early 70s.
Hand in hand with colonialism comes the demonization of the native people, and that usually goes with your cannibalism, your savage people, your kind of like, because they're not white and they don't have a similar culture to the West, they're demonized. And those are still fresh, kind of seen in the news, seen in your newspaper thoughts of the time. And
actually not to like jump ahead too much, but like the
not to jump the gun, you said.
You're gonna jump the gun, are we?
Jump ahead, actually. It's slightly different.
Ahead of the gun.
But I mean, like the film is basically split into two halves, and it's what you're saying about the subversion is that the initial presentation of the cannibalistic tribes is kind of like playing into audience expectation. It's almost like playing the Mondo documentary.
Yeah, because we're not seeing this these four people as anything but heroes at this point. They're still depicted as,
because they're white people that went missing.
Yeah.
The presumption is that they were murdered by the so-called cannibals that you're told over and over again.
And I think it's very overall, without going too much into the specifics later right now, but like I think it's very effective. The way that he does recreate the thing he's trying to criticize relatively well. I think by playing into it at first and then subverting it in the second half, and I do think that works.
Works very well. And that kind of subversion wasn't like an everyday kind of thing like you get these days. Like people since the 2000s have started subverting all kinds of horror tropes, or the 90s inverting horror tropes or inverting like the expectations of the audience. They didn't really do that in 1980. They didn't really do that before. So I think that's a genius element in itself, especially as the director. I haven't seen it, but he did make a cannibal movie beforehand, which was presumably played straight. So it's interesting that they bring that idea to the table, and it's executed so well on the first try.
And Deodato is very much a neo-realist. He's come up through that era, born in 1939. So he's
what does that mean, neo-realist? I never heard that before.
It's a Italian.
Yeah, it's the Italian New Wave.
Yeah. Right. It's like the peak of Italian films, and they made neo-realism is
Bicycle Thieves.
And it's kind of about working people, real subjects, real subject matter, and depicted in a very hyper-realistic way. And
some very good movies. Not horror at all. But
that's the thing. He's not specifically a horror movie director, and if you watch some of his interviews or read some, he really tries to distance himself from those who are, say, your zombie movie type directors.
Because that was also a big boom in Italy at the time as well. Your Lucio Fulci horror movies and your Argentos.
He would despair if you put him anywhere near that, because he sees himself as a more classical director, trained classically, and was brought up through as an assistant director. So this comes across in the film, and this is why I think it's aged particularly well, because it is made not as specifically a horror film, but as just a very realistic depiction of the terrors and horror which happen.
Does he see himself as an exploitation filmmaker in general, or is this like?
Because he definitely is.
Yeah,
based on his output.
I've only seen this film and out of all of his films.
As have I. Yeah, but they're all exploitation, action, and horror.
Right.
But it's your take on that genre, whether you think you're being.
There's a lot of taboo subjects. If you look at some of the stills, so the book above us here has a lot of his early films in, and has every single one of his films and stills from the films. There's a lot of nakedness. There's a lot of sex. There's a lot of stuff that's just raw, that's real. So potentially he has that streak in him. It's very much Italian. Like, he hasn't done much outside of Italy when it comes to what would work well for American or an Anglo-Saxon type audience, an Englishy types,
Brits,
or for Americans. It's very specifically Italian, and he speaks in those terms. So when he talks about his plights with censorship and becoming famous, it's to do with being famous in Italy rather than anything else.
Yeah. I mean, that was a common thread at the time, right? Like, we know Fulci's name, Lucio Fulci, and we know Dario Argento and Mario Bava, but there was loads and loads of other Italian directors at the time making very similar movies, but those didn't get release. I would know their names if I saw them, and I'd know their movies, but they didn't get wide release in America. They didn't get wide release in the West.
But then
he wouldn't have expected to get it himself. Yeah.
But this is why we get these hyper-realistic depictions of rape and of like we do in this opening half, where we get the woman who's committed adultery, who has to be killed, and it's part of their tribes that this happens, otherwise he will be killed. So this such realistic, haunting
absolutely brutal scene.
Yeah,
as well.
It's
one of the most brutal in
it's
the
very
movie.
hard to watch, and,
it's early on, isn't it? So early on. It's
well, this is like this is
gonna be.
exactly like the
first bit of
Mondo
gore.
documentary thing. Right, this is like us essentially as an outsider looking, safely through the television, the app.
But I think it has to be said that he's masterful at that before he gets to the subversion. I would argue.
No, I agree. No, I because the whole thing, we'll talk about it more later, but the whole thing is a commentary on this kind of documentary, right? And this kind of like journalism.
Yeah.
But I think in the first kind of, let's say, first half, when he's recreating it, right, through the character of Professor Monroe.
Yeah.
Like
through the quote unquote good people.
Yeah.
Visiting there.
Yeah. And this is where I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the first half of the film is where we see the natives do the most atrocious stuff before the kind of turning point, where they don't actually do anything in the second half, right?
Well, they absolutely demolish the 4 travelers.
Yeah. They also do stone the head of the woman,
and they do the abortion thing.
Up.
Yeah. That's what you're talking about. That's true. Yeah.
But that is, I think, other than the stuff on the white people that deserved it. Those are the 2 things that we see. You enjoyed that. Those are the only 2 quote unquote savage things we see from the quote unquote savages. But we see much worse from the jumping the gun, as you say.
Whoa, you don't jump that gun, you son of a bitch.
The Americans.
Whoa, what?
But yeah, very powerful bit of shock.
Well, the adultery thing, yeah.
The adultery thing.
It's really hard
with
to
the
watch.
rock. That's quite
really
seared in the brain
watch.
of any person that's seen it.
Yeah.
More so than most other exploitation or extreme movies. They have these almost to the point of farce extremity, but that's just, it's treated in such a way that I think
it's almost the restraint of it. The
restraint of the director to show it from a distance, merely show kind of like
actually
as if it's normal.
It's almost done like
the documentary framing of it actually makes it more effective. Because it feels much more realistic, as you say. It's not, the camera's not right in there shoving like everything in your face.
Unfortunately, what I'm thinking of is like a David Attenborough documentary about animals.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but of like taboo things rather than just animals and stuff, which we kind of consider to be a normal documentary topic.
Animal killing other animals, and things like that are.
Yeah, I mean, if we were all antelopes and we watched a David Attenborough documentary, we'd be...
That would be our Mondo documentary.
Yeah, we'd be feeling pretty shocked, wouldn't we, Joe?
Another thing you notice on a rewatch here in this area is when they find the turtle shell, don't they? And they're his guide, Chaco, he like assumes that it's the natives that have done it. And then it's only on a second watch that you realise it was actually the documentary crew. It's just like a nice thing for a rewatch.
I hadn't actually picked that up.
I didn't pick that up either.
This movie like 4 times.
They find it really like before, right before I think the abortion, the adultery thing, and also when they and then just after that when they discover the body of the documentary crew's guide. It's so like it's so understated. I think the guide like falls over or something, and then it's just right behind. It's just there, isn't it? And then the camera cuts to it, but it was there the whole time. The camera cuts to it, and then it's like this like musical sting, and you're like, whoa. And
he has a couple of good lines there, though. He says something along the lines of like, "I can't believe this happened. He knew the jungles as well as me."
Yeah. What I love is that he recognizes the teeth. How the fuck did he do that?
He had distinctive teeth, right?
But they're like fingerprints.
Well, they are
dental records.
If you can read them.
And he can. He has that ability.
I reckon if I saw both of you two as skeletons, I'd be able to notice.
And now I don't want to look at her. I don't want you to look at my teeth.
You want to keep
anymore.
your tooth anonymity.
Yeah.
Identity theft is not a joke. So they have the guide, and this is when like the younger of the 2 guides, Miguel, is he like strips down naked, right, to like present himself to the tribe, to like, this is like our introduction to the Yakumo tribe, right, properly.
Correct.
It's a touching scene.
I find it like quite fascinating to watch, like the way that they like blow the darts at his feet, and then he's shouting at them, and and the way that they react. I find it really interesting. Yeah,
bravery.
Yeah.
But he's almost going in. He goes in completely differently to how the American filmmakers go in. He's more accepting of their culture.
Well, he's trying to imbibe with their culture, talk to them on their terms.
Well, he's trying to simulate with them, isn't he? That he can actually be part of it, rather than going and taking his values. He understands that he's the one who needs to change, not the other way around, to be able to connect.
Has some kind of respect for the way they live their life.
Yeah, respect is the thing. Yeah, exactly.
And disrespect is a not strong enough a word for what happens later.
And he's not going into to make. He's not going in to make any sort of content, is he? In that he's trying to find the content.
He's going in for the greater good. Yeah.
Well, to bring back home the content so they can be seen as heroes. So if you look at it in a way, he's not actually going in there to be fascinated by the culture. There's the other aspects of it. He's actually going in and he's going to be picking up this reel of tape and he can put it on the screen and these guys you can see it now. So the sensationalism is done. He doesn't need to sensationalize. He can just go in, do what he needs to do and get out.
Well, yeah, he's abstracted from the problematic element of making it entertaining, making it a thrill for the audience.
But he does stay on the, you might say, the correct side of the...
Well, he lets the guides...
He's on the side of the tribe.
He doesn't try to do anything.
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty significant that he's an anthropologist, right? And so he fundamentally is coming in from a different place.
Yeah, and he comes out of a place of respect and
understanding, and I mean, in essence, wanting to learn and integrate with them, rather than make them conform to some image that you're trying to present to the world, right? That's
exactly.
That's it,
He's not trying to make a movie out of these bystanders and innocent people. He's merely wants to see them as they are. Yeah.
No, I almost see, when he gets the tape and he plays the tape and they all come out of their caves and stuff.
A bit later, yeah.
I almost see that as like C-3PO in the Ewoks, where he...
What have you been smoking this today? All these connections you're making.
Is it offensive to call a native Amazonian an Ewok?
Yes.
Is that a slur?
No, I'm not saying they are Ewoks. I'm not saying they are Ewoks. I'm just comparing the fact, when he goes in and starts putting the voice of Darth Vader on, and it's not his voice, and he can change him, and he becomes like a god.
Holy shit, that is kind of like a reference to that, though. Honestly, it kind of is, yeah.
Well, that's what I'm coming to. Yeah. I'm not trying to be disparaging.
Well, I think it's a universal thing.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
It probably comes from 30s movies where they're in the jungle or whatever.
But I'm not just being completely stupid there, am I? There is actually that element of that.
Although you have jumped the gun.
Yeah.
Well, go on then. Re-jump, unjump the gun.
Unjump the gun.
Yeah. We always have to unjump the gun for you, Joe.
Yeah. Oh, jumpy gun show.
Triple J.
So they got the hostage and they arranged the release of the hostage and exchange should be taken to the village. So they get there, they're greeted with hostility and learn that the filmmakers cause great unrest amongst the people.
Again, it builds up the mystery of them, right? Because they loom quite large, right? The documentary crew, without appearing in the first half of the film. That they the mystery is set up with the news broadcast at the beginning. Yeah. And then just the little kind of...
You get kind of a sense that the villagers are definitely wary of the people. And if you're to believe the fact that they haven't seen outsiders or white people before, are they overly wary? Is there a reason that they're...
Well, I think it's specifically Professor Monroe, because he's white. I got the sense that the guides have had dealings with at least the Yakumo before, right? Because how else would Miguel know how to do that? How would be able to communicate to them? I got the sense, right, that was learned, that they had dealings with them in the past.
Well, yeah,
but
I presume so.
Yeah, but because they had a white guy with them, and then of course their previous experience.
Yeah, but there's levels of foreign to the tribe, though, isn't
there? Yeah. I mean, they're still outsiders, but I think that they're more accepting than white outsiders, especially after what came before.
Yeah, and then you got here also then that they encounter the group of Shamite. How do I say that?
Or the Shamatari,
Shamatari.
the swamp people.
Yeah, they encounter a group of Shamatari warriors and follow them to the riverbank, where Monroe's team saves a smaller group of Yamamoto from death.
Yeah, so these are like the scary tribes, right? These have been even the Yakuma are a bit afraid of them. These are like the cannibal tribes. They're always at war with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a drummed up reputation by the documentary in the Western view, though, isn't it? I mean,
I guess. Well, because we hear like the night before, because they spend a night in the village with the Yakumo before the next day, and he's like speaking into his tape recorder, Professor Monroe talking about them. So it's not clear from what I can remember if like that's knowledge that he has from the outside, or if that's what he's been told, either from the guides or from the actual villagers themselves. I'm not sure, but
it's open to interpretation, I guess. But my take would always be that not necessarily trusting the anthropologist to really do his job very well and to operate on Western sensibilities and make assumptions about.
Well, I don't know. I think the opposite.
People.
I think that he would always. Like, I don't think, and that's the whole point.
Is the voice of reason in the latter half?
Sorry,
I don't think. Well, keep that in.
There's a clip.
That's going on the along with me.
Well, no, he's supposed to represent the rational audience, right? He's like what the director wants.
That's his role in the latter part of the movie.
No, he's not a different character. He doesn't.
No, I know he's not a different character.
He doesn't go for a character, right?
But like, as far as the audience,
no, I think he would.
Morality.
I don't think he would buy in. This is my opinion, my interpretation of him, because he's not. There's no conventional.
No, but he's
story
not consciously choosing to buy it.
He doesn't go.
But he's still.
No, I don't think so. I
don't
think so. I think he would be as open-minded as absolutely possible. I think he would. You know, he was clearly wary to go and embed himself with the Yakuma, obviously, right? Because he was hiding. He was wary to go there. But I think. My interpretation is that that the tribe told them, and so that's why he's saying it with authority, is because the tribe, like the locals, said it. That was my interpretation. I don't.
Possibly.
He's presenting,
but again, that's filtered through the guides, right?
Yes.
Translated through the guides.
Yes.
So
yeah, I mean,
to a certain extent, it's not from the horse's mouth, as they say.
So then we get the idea of they save the tribe's members, and then to get their
Well, to get their trust?
Yeah, to get their trust. To get their trust, he then strips naked and bathes in the sea, and then all the women decide to come and jump and...
Yeah, and they're touching his penis, and this is why...
they're having a good time.
Yeah, and this...
As the really awesome soundtrack
it's actually so nice to have a tiny bit of, like, reprieve.
There's a bit of levity,
isn't it? Levity,
yeah. Some of them actually smile. I mean, there's a bit of,
it's kind of nice, like,
positivity.
Yeah.
But it shows an almost universal humanity aspect to us, that there is this levity within that they can laugh, we can laugh, we can all laugh in this one moment.
It's the kind of good bit of documentary filmmaking that the original documentarians would have never made, because they're all about the negative stereotyping
and the sensationalizing.
Correct.
And it also then
I got you, man.
And also like it's nice in itself, but it's also clever because it sets up then the change of tone immediately.
Yeah, when they lead him, then they lead him to find the skeletal remains,
like a monument.
Yeah, bring you up to take you down.
Yeah.
But put you at ease to shock you. Yeah.
And this is where my gun has ended up, that I jumped. Because when he shoots it off...
We've caught back up to the literal gun in the story.
He shoots it off and then plays the C-3PO tape style thing going on. And then they all come out and they're like, whoa, what's going on here?
Captured the human voice.
Yeah. So he agrees to trade the tape recorder for the film reel.
Yep.
So we're back in New York City, baby.
And
Big
Apple.
The
city that never sleeps.
The bright lights of Broadway. And... the executives of the Pan American Broadcasting System invited Monroe to host a broadcast of the documentary to be made for the recovered film. But Monroe insists on viewing the raw footage before making a decision. The executives introduce him to Allen's work by showing an excerpt from previous documentary, The Last Road to Hell. As an aside, all of that documentary footage, some of it...
from a real documentary, isn't it?
Some of it is, he went to Deodato went to London, bought some documentary footage, but he also filmed some.
Oh, right.
So some of the footage you see is real, some of it isn't, a bit like what the film does.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So he's saying that the bit that's meant to be in Vietnam with the displaced people, they filmed that in Italy. So it's quite interesting that, but you couldn't tell. You wouldn't be able to tell which bit's real and which bit's not.
It's a little bit of meta in a time that meta-ness in cinema didn't really exist.
In a way, you could argue the whole film is meta.
Yeah.
The whole film is a very meta concept.
It's an attack on exploitation, and it's an exploitation movie. So
yeah, that in itself.
Yeah, well, I want to talk a lot about that, but I guess we can do it all at the end, right? But yeah, it is meta, like almost like, what's the word when you like do the thing?
Proto meta.
Maybe when you do it, do the actual
when you do the thing. When you do the thing.
Yeah, the thing. When you do the thing, what's that word?
Doing the thing.
I don't think.
Do the Batman?
Is it called thing doing?
Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's it. I knew there was a word for it.
Yeah. Hyphenated word, but yeah.
What were you saying?
No, like there's like a type of satire when you do it. You basically, it's like what Scream is.
Yeah.
When you do the thing that you're like.
You said do the thing like 20 times.
You do the thing. That's what it is. Do the thing. When you're doing the thing.
It's. I guess it's a form of satire. I guess.
Or is it pastiche when you do it?
Oh,
when you do the thing, is it pastiche?
Pastiche is a fancy word that I don't think I even know what it means.
Let me have a look.
Yeah.
I don't even spell it.
I know it's spelled S-C-A-T.
An artistic work in the style imitates that of another work, artist or period.
Well, that's like homage.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah.
Cut all this shit. Fuck it.
When you do the thing.
Cut this thing.
Do it. Do it. Cut it.
When you cut the thing.
Sorry, give me a minute. You're having a Joker moment.
Yeah.
Joker 2 moment.
Yeah. Yes. So then informs Monroe that Alan staged dramatic scenes to get more exciting footage. So we kind of watch a little bit of it when they're just beginning filming. It's all a laugh and a joke, lols. All of the love between them. They're just young kids going out there creating American movies for American people and being heroes while doing it. And this is before then we really get into the bulk of the second act of the film. And probably the most, well, definitely the most controversial and most talked about. And
yeah, up till this point, apart from the stone rape, adultery shenanigans.
That's that little thing.
Yeah, we haven't had anything ridiculously extreme. But after this point in the movie, it takes a big turn, and everything from this point is
turn
apart
it
from
up
the
to
New
11.
York, the New York basically like reactions to that. It's all extremity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this really, I assume, is like the first instance of found footage, you would guess, in this scenario.
Yeah. I told Joe this because it's funny, but like I didn't tell you this, presumably definitely because I wanted to see your live reaction, or I wanted them to see it.
Okay.
You know what? Google and ChatGPT told me is the actual first fan footage, not the one that pioneered it, but the one that did it first.
What?
It's a little old 1972 movie called The Legend of Boggy Creek.
What the fuck? No way.
That absolute
bullshit. No way.
Piece of garbage that we saw.
No, surely not.
Well, it's shot in a documentary style.
Fuck.
With Bigfoot, like alleged Bigfoot.
That was 1972.
Yeah, 8 years before Cannibal Holocaust.
I can't think of fuck. Oh god.
Yeah.
I knew I hate that genre.
Yeah.
No.
There are fake documentaries or mockumentaries before that, but Legend of Boggy Creek is the first one that's horror.
No way.
So
wow.
Yeah, I mean it's terrible.
Yeah.
Or at least I haven't seen it since the time that it felt like it was the longest movie of all time.
We should do that one.
Yeah.
I've not seen it and I'm intrigued.
It's one of the only movies I've given a 1 on IMDb or a half on Letterboxd. But yeah.
What I can imagine though is that film may have been the first, but I almost have. We can always be certain he didn't watch that.
Yeah,
probably never.
I feel
he probably
I
came up with
not.
it on his own.
Legend
like
of Boggy
later.
Creek can't have had a wide release, and it was made in the south of America. I in the 1972.
Yeah.
He did not have access to this movie in Italy. That's not what was happening, I feel like.
So I think it still stands as probably...
Yeah, it's the first good one.
Yeah,
Shit about
yeah.
fucking Legend of Boggy Creek. Yeah.
So then we do start to see this found footage, and the groups trek through the rainforest, walking for days, and then we come to the moment where, there's a lot of animal killing within this as well, but there's Felipe too.
It's the most objectionable 15 minutes of the movie.
This whole sequence.
The turtle is murdered viscerally, and
it's disturbing, isn't it? It's really disturbing.
It's very
the
disturbing.
snake, the tarantula, and the monkey all happen within
relatively
10
close
minutes.
together.
Yeah.
People I've worked with in Australia still kill snakes and things like that. That still does happen, for better or worse. That's still something.
Yeah, but it's not for entertainment.
People eat turtles. I mean, like killing for food is different. And
but I reckon the way they did it is quite disgraceful. Like, there's certain moments within that sequence.
Well, you could argue that it's a humane kill, chopping off the head. That's the quickest possible way you could do it.
Yeah.
But my argument isn't. My argument is just it's for the movie. That should be like the rule.
Yeah.
You never heard of movie magic? Like, why can't
this is the opposite of movie magic.
Yeah.
This is black. This is movie black magic.
Exactly.
This is.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
why did it have to be
It's not
real
magic.
Yeah.
It's just nothing.
And
It's
like,
just...
They demonstrated the fact that they had the practical effects abilities to do this. I can't imagine that it was any more difficult to mock up like a turtle being
surely
killed
yeah.
compared to,
they did a
the
leg.
man later on being
Yeah,
like,
they
chopped.
did a fake leg, didn't they? But a human leg. They didn't want to waste time making turtle legs, I guess, or turtle heads.
It holds. He's right. So Deodato talks about this, that the movie isn't the movie without the animal killing. Like, it's an integral part to the structure and story, and the idea that it will complicate our reaction to the film. Like, there's something complicating about it and something real about it, which really, really blurs the lines of movie and real life. This mockumentary style, was it? Did people actually die? Because you can see a living, still beating heart of a turtle. You can see its leg twitch with the nerves. You can see them like disgustingly break the shell, like these disturbing moments of which is so real.
I mean,
raw.
if you take morality out of it, which you shouldn't ever do, it's a good thing to do for the movie because it obviously adds to the realism because it is real.
Yeah, but then if you
And it
remove
adds to the
morality, you might as well kill the humans as well. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
like, yes, it's true that like the blending of like real killings and then fake killings later,
makes the quote unquote real footage stronger.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes, I still honestly think it's probably true. That like they weren't able to, like, with effects, to get something so realistic, like the tiny things, like the little twitching of the legs. Like, there's something.
But he does say on the 2011 version. So this Blu-ray has both the unedited version and the 2011 edit. There's only about 12 seconds difference in running time. It dulls somewhat the turtle scene. That's all it really does, and it gets rid of the twitching because he basically says about.
Well, that's the most horrifying element.
He said it was all necessary apart from. In quotes, perhaps we overdid it a bit with the turtle.
But that's the part of it that's most replicatable with practical effects. Right?
Yeah.
So if they wanted to do that, I could understand that, and I would even praise it if it was practical effects. But it's an actual turtle, so I can't. I'm not going to bring myself to praise it.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, it does objectively blur the line between facts and fiction, but it doesn't work for me. It doesn't make sense to make a film, and we'll talk about it more later. But like, the hypocrisy of
the hypocrisy is the problem.
Yeah, the hypocrisy is the problem. Like, making an exploitative film exposing exploitative journalism is fundamentally the problem, right? With the
but is it arguably, is it actually exploitative when these are the animals that the locals killed and ate in the same way what they're doing. In fact, aren't they just assimilating to what the local culture is? Aren't they just doing what those people do?
No, because the locals don't do it for entertainment. Presumably, they don't shove a camera in it. They're not trying to make money.
But they did. But they did eat the pig. So one of the reason why they killed the pig is because they were fed up of eating fish every night. So they were like, "Well, we can." Put
and the
this
scene
in,
Apocalypse Now where the cow is killed isn't for entertainment purposes, and the scene in this movie where the monkey is killed isn't for entertainment purposes because the tribe did actually like parts.
Yeah,
of the
I know.
it's
It's a
But
delicacy.
in a way,
for
it is
them.
in fact it is in part real documentary because there are real tribes people in there. It's a real location. So although it is fictional, our overarching story is fictional, there are elements of realism and things that actually do happen. So the film is.
No, but I mean, you said it earlier, Mike. Like the difference, like if the tribes people were killing the turtle when they ate it and they happened to film it,
Yeah, that's the problem.
I would feel
Yeah.
different about that, and I do, and like the monkey scene.
I'm not actually defending it, by the way.
You literally were, but
no, I'm playing devil's advocate with you.
From
because
an
I think
artistic
there's
point
an
of view, it is
interesting-
defendable if you put morality to
Yeah.
the side.
well, again, you put morality to the side, then everything's defendable.
But this is
like,
heated, right?
No,
This
but
is-
if you're talking cinematically, right? It's only defendable if it's a
Well,
good
if
scene.
morality is to the side, then like snuff movies have artistic merit. Like,
Only if they're well made.
And he
Yeah.
also says that death has become taboo when it was a natural fact of him growing up in Italy. So these ideas which he had at that time were something that naturally happened. And the guide told them they could eat what the natives eat as they were going through the Amazon. So it all leads into this idea that they did it for film, but they did actually use the meat. to
Did they
feed
actually
people.
eat the turtle?
I actually don't know on that one.
Because I mean, you see it in the movie them eating the turtle, but I don't think they actually ate the turtle.
No, probably. To be honest, probably not. But who?
Yeah.
They don't really.
I'm sure people ate it. Like the extras
If they ate
on
the
set,
entirety of
crew.
that turtle, it wouldn't make it okay, but it'd make it better.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure everything that got killed got eaten. I don't doubt that. Like when you think about like all of the cast and crew, especially the native crew, they'd have eaten it, right? I'm sure it got eaten. It's not. But
Yeah, but you're making a
it's
sweeping
about-
assumption, though, right? Like, did they kill and eat 3 other turtles off camera? Probably not. They killed the turtle and
yeah, I know. That's
For the
exactly my
movie,
point.
yeah.
Exactly my point. Yeah, like the intention behind killing that turtle was first and foremost to shock the audience.
yeah,
I think we can all agree on that.
Mm.
Like, and there is a difference, like a minor difference, but there is a difference, like between this and Apocalypse Now, or even some of the animal, like the monkey kill, is probably the one.
I would say
that's
if that was the only animal death,
I would be uncomfortable,
would
but it feels okay.
defend it,
yeah,
I think.
and doesn't, to me,
if it's
like weaken the commentary of the film, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I know it's arbitrary and kind of somewhat racist to say, that who commits the murder of the animal actually makes a difference, but it kind of does because it's a cultural thing.
well, I think it's the intent more than anything.
Yeah, actually,
The reasoning,
you're right,
the
you're right.
motive.
Yeah.
I don't actually really like the scene by any stretch of the imagination. I really don't like it. I think it's. I think they should have never have killed any animals in the making of this film. There's no doubt in my mind that's the case. But there is artistic merit in what they did. However, Deodato will say that himself. So he says that himself. He says it is integral to the story we're trying to portray.
I would
however,
be singing the praises of this scene if it was visual effects.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what
yeah.
it's saying.
I would be
absolutely.
loving the fact
No,
that they
absolutely.
added this
I
to the
agree.
scene.
Honestly,
because
I agree.
it would be visceral and shocking.
And there is some stuff I don't want to watch, but if it's all movie magic, it's totally fine. Yeah, but it's not movie magic, right? And it does change things, and it does,
Which cheapens it.
somewhat feel hypocritical.
Not only is it
Yeah.
immoral, but it feels cheap. I mean, who would like
Is that, well, 'cause
if you go into an exploitation movie wanting to be shocked, and then you watch an hour and a half of some guy killing animals, anyone could make that movie. They'd get arrested,
true.
but anyone
Yeah.
could make that movie.
Yeah.
It's a cheap, horrible way of
that's
doing
true.
that.
Actually,
There's no artistry with that.
It's true. It's easier. It's easier than doing it practically.
And that's
practically. Yeah, it's true.
Outside of the moral concerns, it's lazy and it's not good filmmaking to do that.
And it caused revolt.
Carl York, who played Alan Yates, he never got a script. He never like owned one.
Oh right, okay.
He was like learning his lines on the day, like just
May have been in the script, but if they didn't get a script,
He was
then-
basically told, "Do you want to spend 3 weeks in the Amazon shooting a film? You've
like
been invited to
a
do
non-union
this."
film, and
Yeah.
and he got cast because he had the right shoe size, and he
Yeah,
said,
10 and a half. I think
Yeah.
it was.
Well,
yeah.
I'm a 9 if anyone wants to. You know.
Have me kill turtles on screen. I'll do it.
But yeah, I honestly,
Well, he didn't kill the turtle.
No, he's not
really
involved
there.
in that.
Yeah.
No, that was done before he arrived because he got there late. He got there like 2 weeks
Yeah.
later because like somebody dropped out. Basically, is the whole thing. But yeah, there was revolt. Like I mean, the animal stuff. There's a lot of other things that like it was very hostile work environment, right? For the actors, and there was a lot of conflict with the director and a lot of conflict with each other.
They didn't really get to know each other, I think, was part of it. They really didn't. They didn't have time. There was a language barrier between lots of the cast as well. Only a couple of Americans in there.
Budgetary concerns isn't really going to allow.
No. And it was a very fast-moving project. Not a lot of script, and a lot of it was done on the fly. So this sort of idea of that's the idea of them killing the piglet was because they were genuinely fed up of eating fish.
Yeah.
So they were like, well, let's put this in the film then.
These kind of stories remind me of Fitzgeraldo, if you know the movie, which is a Werner Herzog movie with Klaus Kinski. I mentioned it to you earlier, but basically, like, Werner Herzog had heard this story about, I don't know, decades ago. They needed to move a ship from one place to another, so they got native people to haul it up a mountain to the body of water on the other side, and it was actually a mythical story, but in the making of the movie, he actually had it done. He built a ship and then had the native people and the crew and so on haul it up this mountain.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, where does fact end? Where does fiction begin? It's not quite as strong a theme in Cannibal Holocaust, but the theme is there. Yeah.
So let's
how far you can push a production
Yeah.
to being like the mythical thing that it's trying to represent is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
let's just finish off the plot.
Yeah.
There's lots more to talk about with this film. So basically, things just really, really escalate with this documentary crew. They sensationalize. They come up with ideas to actually make it interesting.
Sorry, you know, with that guy that gets
Yeah.
bitten by a snake, and like they cut off his leg. He wants them to cut off the leg, right?
Yeah, because he might stop the poison from spreading into his bloodstream.
They're not that bothered.
Yeah, but he's bitten on his foot. Why did they have to take off
Yeah.
here? Why could it not
and
be like down
he was ready
here?
to go with that machete. He wanted to do it. Yeah.
He's got a snake in his boot. Take off the foot, surely.
But they just did not seem that bothered by his death whatsoever. I think that was.
They didn't give a shit. Did they really like? Did he die just because of the leg chopping, or was it the poison? Like, it's never really
a bit of
clear.
both.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is the idea of this film, though, isn't it? That in another film he would probably get his leg chopped off but survive, but because it is this film and it is so disturbing, he has his leg chopped off and he still dies.
Realism and that kind of like brutal, like downer.
There's no Walking
Point
Dead
of view.
Herschel surviving this sort of scenario. And they just do more despicable things. So the Americans just keep piling it in. They purposefully burn like the things they did in, what do they say, like in Colombia, like we did in Colombia.
No, it was Cambodia.
Cambodia, not Colombia. Like we did in Cambodia, and they burn it down. They rape a woman. They're excited by the fact that they see this local woman with the most famous image of all, with the
okay.
the spike.
I know we glossed over a bunch of stuff, and I do want to talk about the pig again. But the thing with the woman, though, the implication, right, is that they did it, right?
It's text that they did do it. Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's explicit in the text.
I think it's explicit. The man smiles at his handiwork and then is told to
Are you sure,
stop
though?
smiling.
Are you sure about that? Just
I'm certain of that.
I
Definitely.
took it as a strong implication that they did it. definitely.
It was the same woman that they.
No, I know it was the same woman.
It was definitely.
And they're trying to.
I don't think there's any.
The camera cuts, and they're trying to say, "Oh, look, the tribe did this," and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But I didn't think it was definitely.
Well, maybe
I wouldn't say that was 100%.
Maybe that's my interpretation, but I feel like it's definite.
I agree with you. I just don't think it was definitely confirmed. It was strongly implied. I think. Yeah.
Okay, I disagree with you, but yeah.
Well,
but they're as valid as each other.
They've literally just like burnt people alive.
Yeah, but that's a step. That's a step up.
Yeah, but they raped the woman.
Yeah,
and then we cut to her being on a pike.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they did that.
And then he smiles and is told to not smile.
Yeah, but he's like, I can't believe my luck.
No, after all we've seen from this man, how he doesn't give a shit about anything about what other than the story he's created for himself in this area.
Or she could have been killed in such a horrific way because she's committed adultery. They don't understand the concept of rape. There is no rape over there. We've seen, even in this modern day, in some countries, Middle Eastern countries, where sex before marriage is illegal, that women sometimes, when being raped on holiday, they're the ones who still get in trouble. So the idea that there's always this potential.
Well, I mean, it's in the film as well. They kill someone at the beginning for adultery, but like,
so there's always potential. Yeah, it could be both. I'm not saying one or the other, but
I'd say it was an outside chance, I guess. But my reading is that it is.
I also assumed it was them every time I watched it, but yeah, I don't think
you can dismiss.
I don't think it's
they're the monsters.
They are the monsters.
The native people are not the monsters.
No, but they still do. Well, they're monstrous in some ways when they kill their women so brutally, like they would an animal.
But it goes back to what we were talking about with the turtles, right? They're not doing it for sensationalism and fame and money like a Western.
No, but if you come across that, you might be within. Oh, hello, this is a bit of luck that we've discovered this. I'm not saying that is true, and I'm also not saying that your interpretation is true. I'm just saying they can both very much live within how much you want to demonize this crew, because they do so much else. But it is very realistic to think that they would have done that,
I guess. But like, this movie does nothing but demonize these people, and so.
But it doesn't.
I don't think it's purposefully making ambiguity, because it's literally telling you, hammering home throughout the last 40 minutes.
I think there's intentional ambiguity, because they would have just had a little shot of them doing it. I think if they wanted to make it 100%.
That's why I wasn't sure they did do it, because
I do think it's definitely strongly implied. You're supposed to think that, I think, but they definitely would have shown.
I don't think you're supposed to think anything there. I think you just think whatever interpretation is. You could look at him smiling and say that actually, wow, how lucky we are that he doesn't necessarily have to commit that atrocity to then enjoy the fact that they've stumbled upon something really perverse.
I think the reason that we don't see them do it is purely for the additional shock of it panning from to them, to him smiling. That's the shock. They did it. That's way more powerful than seeing them do it. Yeah,
it's a good interpretation.
Yeah, and it doesn't like spoil.
I'm not telling you your interpretations are wrong. I'm just saying I think that's what was intended. Yeah.
Another thing about showing them doing it is that it spoils the reveal, right? And it's an iconic image.
Correct.
That is clearly an image that he's very proud of. It's plastered all over the marketing. And like even I can never bloody remember.
Well, no, he's not proud of that image. Who do you mean?
The director.
He wasn't.
At the time, he means, because it's in the trailer, right?
He wasn't proud of that image.
Really?
Yeah, not at all.
Because when Carl York was being interviewed about it, he had all kinds of problems with Deodato, but he did say, you got to admit the man can craft a striking image. Like even he has to admit.
He doesn't have an issue with the image. He has an issue with how the image was used to promote the film.
Right.
So he wasn't in charge of the promotion of the film. The promotion of the film was in charge of United, who then decided on all of their posters that they would put that image on it, and it caused humongous backlash. It was the biggest backlash you can imagine, and the marketing literally.
You're talking about United Artists, the American studio.
United Artists.
So that international.
They
rather than Italian.
Yeah, it was picked up by United, who wanted it to go everywhere. They didn't mind. Again, we'll get more into this, but they didn't mind that all of the raping and the killing was in the film. But the idea that then they put that on the poster is actually one of the reasons it got picked up by the censors, and it started to have such a reputation for it. It's become iconic now.
Yeah, I guess we'll talk about it later, but the video nasty lists and the BBFCs and the people in control at the time, they'd ban movies just for their titles. They wouldn't even watch these movies. So to a certain extent, if you wanted to make money, you didn't want to advertise yourself so blatantly as a extreme video nasty, this movie could be banned kind of movie.
But he's very, very upset with United Artists. And this was when he did an interview in the 90s.
Yeah, but that's like retrospective. Like,
but
if they hadn't done it, then maybe we would have got more money, or we'd maybe got a wider release or something. Maybe at the time,
Well, he's not he has nothing to do with the marketing of the film, though. That's up to United.
But he's making that decision based on what happened.
Like 10 years later, it's like
but
it's still a valid directorial opinion, obviously.
But he's not in charge. I'm not saying he's not proud of that visual image, because you should be, because it's a striking visual image.
He made this movie to be as offensive as he could. So I find it hard to believe in 1980 he would have been wanting the marketing to be reserved about its extremity.
Potentially, but
you want
to bring up the pig? You want to go with the piglet?
Yeah, just talk about the pig. Yeah, it's only like a little story, but you might that Alan York. Carl York. I always get the name. The character.
You're giving him like.
I always get them mixed up. The character and the actor. He apparently relationships had already broken down at this point, but on that day that they had to kill the pig, he was on a boat with the pig going to set.
Right.
And
just him and the pig.
Yeah, and but he was hanging out with the pig. He bonded with the pig, like they were friends.
Right.
They were like, he was like his little pig friend. And then
I'm making light of it. It's kind of sad.
It is sad. I can't help it.
It's still kind of amusing, the image of him.
Deodato was handed him a shotgun when they got to set and said, "Okay."
Did he not know that the pig was going to be killed when he?
No, because like Joe said, it was done. They improvised half that shit, and they wanted to eat pig, so they were like, "Yeah, we'll kill one as part of the film." So they brought it to set, and then they gave Carl York a shotgun, and was like, "Okay, 1, 2, 3. You got to run around, terrorize the village, and then shoot this pig, right?"
Right.
And he's like, "What? No, I can't do that." And then apparently, according to Carl York, there was no
they didn't need to. I mean, they wanted to eat the pig, obviously, but they didn't need to shoot the pig either.
But if you're going to kill it anyway, you might as well. They've already killed lots of animals on.
It's probably film. one of the more merciful deaths, to be honest. To a big shotgun to the head. But
I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying within their scope of atrocities they've committed to this point, this one is really low on the list, and they're actually going to eat it. So it's sort of like, well, this is a good one.
No, but I'm just trying to provide solutions for basically all of the animal deaths in this movie. None of them needed to happen.
No, none of them do.
No matter how much they wanted to eat the pig, they could have. If they want to eat the pig, kill it off camera. It doesn't need to be killed in the movie. But carry on.
But you got to make hay while the sun shines, and they were hungry that day, and just
whoever invented that phrase did not mean it to be applied to this particular situation.
Well, if anything, it's actually quite close to how that original one came about, because it's farmers working on farmers working on farms. How do you think bacon comes about?
Bacon tree.
I don't think they submit their pig killing footage to the local studio to be used in the movie.
No. I was gonna saying they don't actually show the stuff on Clarkson's farm, but it is a genuine documentary where they do have to go and show the realities of it.
Correct.
They go and kill the pigs.
Morally, they know it's wrong to not just show Clarkson shooting a pig, right? Whether he does or doesn't.
And there's even a scene,
but they don't show it.
There's a scene where he's just about to shoot a deer as well, and they cut it, they fade it out before it happens.
Yes.
So they don't actually show it, and they have the decency to know that that's not going to be.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm arguing.
I'm not arguing. I'm just like playing devil's advocate because
yeah, it's a difficult thing to play devil's advocate for.
well, it is, but you've got to explore it. Yeah. You can't without. If we just all say all the time that this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, then why not just explore the reasoning behind that?
At the same time, I'm the most. If it was anything else other than actual death on film, I would be arguing that it should be in movies and it should be in mainstream movies. Fuck it, like do what you want. Censors can't stop this and shouldn't stop this.
I mean, there is a point to it all in a sense that he makes, and he spoke to some Americans who said, "So what is worse to you? Is it worse that you watch the TV, you watch the 6 o'clock news, and you go to another country and they're showing humans killing other humans, real footage of this, or is the animal killing in Cannibal Holocaust more shocking to you?" And 100 times out of 100, it's the animal killings in Cannibal Holocaust. It's interesting because now, or when he was alive, he sort of talked about he always is trying to defend it. So there is this defense that he always goes to about what I've said is like my idea of playing devil's advocate is playing the role of Deodato there because that is his position. He doesn't like the turtle one, but the others he says, "Wow, it was necessary. I wouldn't do it the same way now, but I did," and he lives with that. And he says the turtle bit is the only bit he hates watching when he watches the film in his later life. That was the only bit he regretted. So he didn't regret the monkey, didn't regret the piglet, didn't regret the snake. There wasn't a regret there with that. So we have to look into this because, yes, we're looking into our opinions on it, but we're also looking at the director who is still, or was still until recently, defending it in documentaries and in interviews as that it was a necessity. I grew up with death and surroundings when I made the film. Things on the TV, there was war, we were shown live deaths on screen, we were shown a hanging of an American in a foreign country, and was that more disturbing or less disturbing than the animal deaths in Cannibal Holocaust? You know, he put on screen these incredibly taboo subjects and subject matter and put them straight into your face and still played with that idea in later life by saying what he said. So, you know, he defends it in some respects, saying that actually it was just something that happened in Italian films at that time. In cannibal films, animal killings were normal. This is just the only one that made it internationally. This is the one that we all look at from our morality standpoint because it's the only one that made it across the pond.
Mm. Well, I wouldn't feel differently in any other film. I feel how I feel about this, you know. And,
no, so do I. Yeah. But it's interesting. You have to play that devil's advocate.
But societally, we have been predisposed to believe that is the way things should be.
You know,
if we were in 1980 and we were from a culture that didn't herald animals as strongly.
You know,
a country that didn't have pets,
but again,
then
when you then you start to get towards the subjectivity of morality, and it's a sliding scale, and then nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, it's my personal opinion. I don't speak for myself. I'm not going to speak for anybody else. You know that no art is worth death. That's what I think, and you know
that's why the rules are in place.
Yeah, and it's interesting, you know, that Deodato has been so adamant in defending it because presumably it's the thing he's been most criticised for.
Yeah, but, and he mentions it in every single interview I've watched. Yeah. He sort of goes through it, and he's like, and he spouts the same stuff. He says it is what it is at this point, and you know he'll say things like, "The little monkeys," he says, "which made an impression on me because when one of them's killed, the others died of heartache." So yeah, this stuff wasn't easy at the time when they're doing it, and he had a obviously very different scale of morality to the cast and the crew of this film, and what he found acceptable others did not find acceptable. But you've got to delve into the mind of this man. I mean, you've got to think he grew up in the Second World War in Italy in a fascist state. He grew up in a very different place, a tougher time. And he's not going to have the same views and opinions as an American in the 1970s and 80s who were so far removed from the ground operation of the Second World War and being on the fascist side of the Second World War. Like, he grew up within that structure and a family structure, and his heroes were these neo-realists and loved that sort of cinema. So you can see, in a way, why it culminated in this stuff. But it's not right, in my opinion. But you can see where it comes from. It's a dark subject matter. And it's a very taboo subject matter.
Yeah. And to a certain extent, nothing we say or do is going to save the turtle. The turtle was dead before the movie was released. So long as the rules are applied in the future...
Yeah.
The movie exists as it exists.
Thank God it's gone out of fashion, because that was a fashionable thing to do then. And, you know, he talks about, actually, one of the interesting things he talks about is that, look, my previous cannibal film, I didn't want the animal deaths in there. He does say, I didn't want them in there. But then the producer who was in Singapore wanted, for Eastern audiences, they want to see animals fighting animals and animal deaths. It's entertaining to them. And that was specifically more for that audience. So the producer, who we got very angry at afterwards, put in these scenes himself. So added in these scenes, and he was told, we're going to do another cannibal film, Cannibal Holocaust. And he said, I don't want to do it. And in the end, he did do it. He broke his own rules there, where he said, I don't want to do it, but I will do it. And this is just what was happening at the time. And he said a lot of it, he wanted this one specifically to be in the English language because of the international audience. But they were not used to, and we're still not used to, that sort of cinema. And I don't think we should get used to it either. But you got to think there's a whole Eastern cultures out there that find this okay.
There's an element of target audience, isn't there? So if you explicitly want to market it to the Western audience, you're gonna not include these kind of things.
Yeah,
but there's a movie, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a Mexican movie from the 90s, like a gang kind of movie, and it has dogfighting in it, like simulated dogfighting, which caused a trouble at the scene at the time of release, but it was going for realism, and that was what was happening on the streets of wherever it was set at the time. So it's where you draw the line. It's where you personally stand in terms of morality, whether you want to support the movie.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
everybody makes their own decision.
Yeah, I mean, like, it, we should probably acknowledge the fact that we are doing a podcast on it, right? Like, we made a choice to do that, and we, even if we like condemn the actions of the film, we're somehow benefiting from its existence, right? While condemning it, right? So I mean, we have to kind of acknowledge that part of it too, that we could have chose to do another film, but we're doing this.
But I think this movie is so good that, quote unquote, it makes it okay.
Okay.
I don't want to say that, but like,
but you're thinking
it makes it it makes it like on a pure objective basis, it makes it more forgivable that this is a good movie. If it was a shit movie and it had these scenes in it, nobody would be forgiving these scenes or adding asterisks to their review of the movie, because it would be a movie not worth saving from controversy. Yeah. But this movie is so good that it's a shame that these movies that those scenes are there, because it's a great movie. So but we'll come back to some of this. I think we probably need to move on from the
finish the plot,
animal stuff. Yeah,
plot wise, anything else you really want to say, Dave, as we go through it? Is there any more?
No, I mean, do you want to talk about like the final deaths?
Yeah, so in the end, they push it way too far, and there's a revolt. They're attacked by the tribe for revenge for the girl's rape and death. Jack hit by a spear. Alan shoots him to prevent his escape. The scene then moves to the crew filming the natives, undressing Jack in their captivity, castrating him. Alan says they got lost, and their last attempt is with the flare gun. Commotion. Faye is captured, stripped naked, gang raped, beaten to death, beheaded. They locate and kill the last two members of the team. Camera drops to the ground. And then, disturbed by what they seem, the executives that have come together to have a final review of this is going to air on TV or not. They all order the footage to be burned, and Monroe leaves the station pondering who the real cannibals are.
Brilliant practical effects. Some of the best practical effects.
Yeah. Again, it makes you like lament what they could have done with the animals.
Yeah,
because they did a real good job with this stuff. It's
like
it's
amazingly believable, especially with the directorial kind of fan footage, camera use. Now, let alone in 1980, I could believe that is a thing that is happening. Like I'm seeing a man having his legs chopped off or his penis chopped off, etc. I think it's extremely good. Especially when you consider that most of the people that watched it back in 1980 to 85 watched it on VHS in the shittest quality, I imagine. So even with HD, it looks fucking great. Like the visual effects are amazing, and it's one of the most harrowing 10-minute segments in a movie I've ever seen.
It's shocking in its detail and its depiction of their deaths.
It's brutal.
Like you've got, I mean, I think
it's brutal, and you're okay with it.
Yeah, because
to a certain point, because they're such pieces of shit.
Yeah.
Which is what horror movies have always, slasher movies especially, have always tried to instill in you. The people are terrible, and you want them to die. But how many movies have demonstrated you so strongly that these people are terrible that they deserve that? Right? Like, that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, because their death is some of the most terrible deaths
the worst
that you could ever have.
in any horror
and yet
movie.
you don't feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
Because they're so terrible, and the movie's done such a good job of demonstrating to you that they're terrible.
But you still feel sickened by what you see within that, right?
Correct.
Because you're seeing, like, I think one of the most horrific visual parts of the film, the entire film, is the bit where they got the stone on the stick and like they just sort of bludgeon his sternum, his stomach away from the rest of his legs. It's just like, oh
they're
my
kind
God.
of chopping.
But you can see, when you like mallet a chicken or something, or you take a chicken leg or like these sort of things.
Yeah, and like flesh becomes flesh.
Oh, God, yeah.
It's brilliant. I love it. I think it's one of the strongest bits of, I'm going to say it, the strongest bits of horror cinema there is.
I would agree.
The last 15 minutes of this movie.
It's incredible.
Yeah. And he's
amazing.
And
think of the film, save the film, and just him saying that, while he's videoing his friend, and then his girlfriend died,
yeah.
And we pushed it too far, guys, for that last shot.
Yeah.
Really doesn't give a to the end. They're terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
brutal. I love it. I wish that this kind of brutality was in more movies. Extremity these days sucks. Like the extremity of the 70s and 80s had much more of an artistry to it, I would say, and it was built in a certain way. It wasn't built in an Eli Roth kind of way where it was just there for like gore for no reason other than gore. The shock is just the actual action itself. Whereas in Cannibal Holocaust and Sarlo, there's an emotive aspect to that violence and that gore that I think works so much better.
What do you mean by emotive aspect?
Because you've known these characters and you have a feeling about these characters, and there's a somewhat catharsis in Cannibal Holocaust anyway, intrinsically related.
They're not just meat. They're dying.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It's
you feel it, and you don't know what to feel when you see them being treated in the way that they're treated.
Yeah.
It's the reverse of Sarlo, but in a similar manner, that movie is so well made to put you in the place of the victims. You feel the opposite of Cannibal Holocaust. But those are two ends of the spectrum, but you're so inserted into that extreme violence that it has much more of an impact than a lot of the extreme movies from later on, I would say, anyway.
Yeah,
purely because good directors are doing it. Good directors and writers are making those two movies.
So yeah, we'll just do a very brief. We've talked about it a lot, very quick. It'd be interesting to see what your stand is on it as a film. Like we would review a film now, we'd give it something out of 10. What would you give this film out of that 10?
It was a 9 out of 10 until my most recent rewatch, and then I put it to a 10 out of 10.
Right.
I think I always thought it was the best of the genre of extreme horror and a pioneer of found footage and the best exploitation movie, but I never really thought of it as in comparison with other horror movies, and I'd only seen it 2 or 3 times, and I haven't seen it in about 5 years. But on the most recent watch, I thought, masterpiece.
I see Dave seething over here.
I know it's seething, but I like it less every time I watch it. When we Mike and I went through a period of watching all the extreme ones, and this was one. Yeah, I think in my mind it was probably my favorite one, or maybe top 2 out of the ones we saw.
Yeah, this Irreversible and Salo.
Those
the good ones.
Yeah, I would say so. But yeah, I think. I mean, so we're doing numbers, so I would say. 6.5 or 7.
So it's basically like Joker 2 then.
What did I give Joker?
Like 6.
You gave it a 6.
Did I? Okay, we'll give it a 7. Like my primary issue is and I think I said this at the beginning as well. Ignoring the fundamental hypocrisy, which is kind of a big issue, to be honest with you. I find it fundamentally hypocritical to make an exploitation film that comments on exploitative journalism. I find that really difficult, and that's why earlier I asked if he considered himself to be an exploitation filmmaker, because but
does that not make it the most perfect vehicle for the comment, right?
No.
For that stance?
No. No, I don't think so. I don't think if you go in there and abuse native actors and endanger their lives and you kill animals, then you're no better than the thing you're commenting on.
Is there evidence that they abuse native actors?
Yes, lots of evidence, in fact. They endangered their lives and they didn't pay them at all. We didn't talk about it, but it's all true.
Right.
So, I mean, that is basically indefensible and shatters, honestly,
But at the same time, I try not to let outside of the camera
that's
stuff.
Well, that's basically what I'm trying to say. So ignoring all that stuff, which I think is actually not insubstantial, I think that the messaging of the movie is a bit too blunt, honestly. I think the first half is very clever, and the second half is very effective, but there's no ambiguity, right? It doesn't guide the audience towards feeling something. It smashes the audience in the head with this message immediately. They might.
Does it need to be subtle if it's making?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
If it's made in a good way, which it is, does it need to be subtle?
No, I don't think necessarily it does. And I wouldn't always necessarily take issue with it either. But it's again, it's this. I know, it's almost like it's just not as clever as it thinks it is, to be honest with you.
But I don't think it's presenting itself in a pretentious manner, which would be to put it into a fancy word, thinking something isn't as clever as it.
Yeah, I think
pretentious, but it's not pretentious in the slightest.
Would you say that when Captain Cook found America, he was subtle in the way he did that?
If anything, if it was subtle, it would be shying away from
Captain Cook
from
is
reality.
Not an artist trying to comment on colonialism.
But they didn't actually rape women within the film, but they depict it very brutally by the Americans who go there. If you look at the British when they went over to Australia, they raped, pillaged, murdered.
Yeah.
The local tribes.
To use subtlety would affect and actively harm the realism.
Yeah, but it's a comment. It's not a commentary on cannibalism or colonialism. It's a commentary on journalistic integrity. That's what it's about, right?
Yeah, but the entire movie isn't boiled down to that. That's not its only facet. Like that's the takeaway message, but it's also also an exploitation movie, and it's good at being both.
Yeah, but it's how can you have like an artistically consistent commentary on exploitation that's exploitative? Like, again, like the reason I asked whether or not he was an exploitation filmmaker was because if he generally wasn't, and then specifically made a choice to make an exploitation movie, you know, as a commentary to this, then it would at least feel like, but it would feel like a decision, like an artistic decision. Again, I couldn't remember the word for what it is when you like, you make something in the style of the thing that you're making a commentary on as an artistic choice. But if he's just an exploitative filmmaker that makes exploitation films and decided that he had a bug up his ass about journalistic integrity and then made a film in his normal style that comments on exploitation, there's no self-awareness.
Isn't that the best place for that message to come from? Then?
No,
name a movie that critiques a genre without also homaging that genre. You can't.
Another film that about journalistic integrity is Nightcrawler, but I wouldn't say a single thing about. And that's not an exploitation film, and that is a commentary on journalistic integrity.
But I'm not talking about journalistic integrity. It's exploitation as a whole, isn't it? It's in the genre of exploitation, but it's also talking about exploitation by larger forces for.
Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, so
right?
yes, like it's the subject is exploitation. Okay, sure. Like that's a more general umbrella term for journalistic integrity, let's say, because that's just journalistic integrity is one example, right, of exploitation. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
So, so firstly, another film that deals with journalistic integrity also falls under the umbrella of commenting on exploitation by exactly the same logic.
Restricting it to film ideas though, because the particular thing that it's attacking is film media.
No, it's journalism. It's journalism, not necessarily film. But
that's its main target, and that's what it's lampooning when you see it in the movie.
Well, do you think that the choice to make an exploitation film was deliberate choice because he's commenting on exploitation? I don't think so. Honestly, I don't think
it's a deliberate choice, but he's making an exploitation movie, and he's made exploitation movies before.
Yeah, so that's why he's an exploitation filmmaker.
So he's the perfect man.
Hypocritically, he just decided that he got annoyed by Yeah, but
you're trivializing the kind of pioneering, excellent thing that he's done in the movie, right? You're saying he's not the man to say it, but he's the man that said it.
Yes, it's
not his fault that he's an exploitation director. That's the movies he makes, but then he had a good idea and made a movie that executed that idea very well.
Anybody can make anything, but like for me, like it cheapens it. Like, I mean, it would have. Don't you feel that if it wasn't an exploitation movie that was commenting on exploitation, it would be more effective?
So, tell me how that movie would work.
Like Nightcrawler, again, as an example, just because it's the one in my head. That's not an exploitation movie that comments on, again, it's still journalistic integrity, but it's in my opinion.
It's an entirely... I don't think they can be compared.
Well, why not?
Because it's critiquing a particular... It's difficult.
Nightcrawler is a character study, but he is still supposed to be like a representative of the kind of person that succeeds in that industry, right? So it's definitely a commentary on the industry, and that industry is a subset of the exploitation industry that Cannibal Holocaust.
I understand that they've got very similar themes, but they're entirely different executions of the same theme.
Yeah.
And to argue one execution is better than another is
one is less hypocritical than the other one, I suppose is what I'm saying.
But the one lives within a Hollywood system, and the other one lives within a different time entirely in 1970s
and one has a
Italy.
huge budget and one doesn't, and one comes from
and it comes from his mind that it's about.
Yeah, the Red Brigades, like the Marxist
Well,
guerrilla.
No, the initial idea came about from the fact that on the TV at the time they were seeing lots of killing, and his son would comment. He was 7 years old at the time and commented on such, where he was like, "Why is this on again? Why are they showing killing on the TV?" And it angered him. So then he went about making a film on that, a very personal story.
What I would argue is, if it's an exploitation movie criticizing exploitation, it's serving the idea to the exact people that are a fan of that kind of exploitation. It's serving the people that it's talking to.
I don't know necessarily if that's true in this case. Well, we can argue about it, but like, he's an exploitation filmmaker that appeals to people like us,
to an exploitation audience.
Yes, however, but like exploit the.
I'm not necessarily an exploitation member of that crowd.
Definitely not. No, me and Dave are, because we're. Well, especially me, I'm a degenerate that's seen all of the worst ones.
Define the term for me.
So you like extreme cinema. You like to be shocked. You like to be
taboo subjects.
Challenged.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me what you're saying, the definition is correct, but like let me refactor it. Like the inciting incident was his son watching the news, right, and feeling that the news is sensationalizing journalism.
Yeah.
The news, in theory, is seen by everybody, but not everybody will go and see an exploitation film.
But he didn't have the ability to create a movie that everybody would see.
Yes, he did.
No, he didn't.
He didn't have to make an exploitation film. Yeah, I know he has a low budget.
If it wasn't an exploitation film, we wouldn't be talking about it. It wouldn't have got the shock audience reaction and distribution on the shock value that it did, and nobody would know it. He didn't have the studio backing to have wide release, so he couldn't have treated it in a different manner. He was an exploitation director.
Actually, he did have the studio backing. He was given the backing by United Artists
before the movie was filmed.
Before the movie was finished, so they shipped back some early footage of what they'd shown, and he was told by United that do more of it, more rape, more killing.
Well, they also seem to
more
have no
extremes.
self-awareness then.
They wanted the more extreme.
But
so
they
he was
might
given
not
the
have known
go-ahead.
the theme of anti-exploitation, though. I mean, that might have helped him, fueled him to push it further. If he finally gets wide release and all they want is more extremity,
do you know,
how can that not push you on the...
Well, I mean, it would. If I was him, it would make me feel kind of gratified in my messaging. I would probably make the TV executives in the film even more cartoonishly evil, which he may have done.
Yeah, it
because
it vindicates everything he thinks.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's like insane. I mean, it does like prove what he's saying is correct, but like, you don't have to be an exploitation filmmaker to make that point.
I'm not saying that you have to be, but I'm saying it's a strong point. It's a strong background for that movie to come from.
I don't know necessarily if I agree with that. Like, I don't know if, like, yes, it is true what you're saying, that the shocking nature of the film is why we're talking about it now. But there are other media, and like, I don't know every single film that's ever made, but I think it's, there are other media, contemporary media at that time, right, that would have commented on these things that weren't exploitation films.
Correct. I mean, Network.
The Network was what I was thinking as well, yeah. Yeah.
And The Conversation, and loads of movies at that time were critiquing the way that, like,
was it All the President's
All the President's Men?
All the
President's 10 out of 10 movie.
Yeah.
A lot of movies at that time were critical of government, critical of media, critical of all these kind of things. And yes, a lot of them are great.
And not exploitation films.
However,
and not made by an Italian director for international release.
I do have to say that I think that why can it not all exist within the world if it was just one way of doing it?
I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong to say he can't make that movie.
No, I would never say that.
No, you're not saying he can't make that movie, but you're saying that he's not the man to make that movie in the strongest manner, which I think is reprehensible.
I
don't think you should say that.
It's weaker. I think I don't think it's anything to do with him. It's about the choice of the movie that he chose to make, which he's not. No one put a gun to his head and made him make the movie that he wants to make. He made that choice, and then he
but he could have made just a run of the mill exploitation movie, but he didn't. I find that laudable. Yeah.
In a way, when I've come to this film, I don't like. Quite obviously, do not like the way that people have been exploited within this to make this film. The way the cast weren't told about the animal deaths, about how the native people were treated. However, from an artistic point of view, where you actually look at it and go, did that actually help the film? The fact that there was no shame, absolutely nothing in there that stopped them from doing this film, even though the fact that it's the most hypocritical thing they could have done. But they've made a very powerful film with an extremely powerful message, and the fact that they exploited people and things for that, perhaps in my view, makes it even more powerful. There's a power to it because there's something real about it. There's something it's on a tightrope, and it's really it could go.
Well, I mean, like,
because there's no getting away from the fact that it's exploitative. But I really do think it's aged incredibly well. I think it looks beautiful. The film itself looks as strong now, stunning.
It does look good, and like the impact to the fan footage is incredible. It's probably the best implementation of fan footage I've ever seen, and it was like the first
I think I would agree with that. Yeah, and apart from Legend of Boggy Creek.
And it hasn't it hasn't really aged. Like the human characters in it.
It's timeless. Yeah, as all the best movies are.
And I think I've already said, I don't know if I said it on camera or not, but I was saying we think that these things aren't actually happening in the world right now, in Gaza, in Israel, in Ukraine, in Russia, that women aren't being raped for just no reason. They're being seen in the same way as an animal in that respect, that people are dying needlessly in such ways, in such cruel ways around the globe.
Yeah. And it's incredibly important that the actual brutality of humanity is conveyed on screen and not sanitized or made to be...
Yeah, there's movie magic, though. Everything can be shown on screen. I don't give a shit what you show on screen with effects. Like, what happens in front of the camera...
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. You're bringing it back to the animals, man. Like, nobody's gonna...
Not just the animals, but again, even ignoring all of that, like...
And the outside of screen stuff as well.
Yeah, okay.
Dorothy was treated very badly on the Wizard of Oz set, but that doesn't stop it being a good movie.
No, okay, fine. Ignoring all of that. Ignoring the hypocrisy, which we've argued now about for some time. Like, ignoring all of that. The fan footage implementation is good. The human kills are very disturbing in an effective way.
Yeah.
The simulated sexual assaults and these kind of things are like well implemented in the sense that they have the intended effect.
Yeah, I think from a movie making point of view, it's flawless.
No,
the only flaw...
The writing is the problem again. Like they could have been more subtle and they could have made it better. I think. Like I just think it
wasn't going for subtlety. Like that's a core tenet of the movie.
Oh yeah, it's probably a core tenet of the entire exploitation genre.
I would argue.
Of course it is. It's my opinion. It is personal.
Yeah,
taste.
I
agree
with that.
But
any colonizer will never be subtle in what they do. You don't go over there to be subtle with the people. The French weren't subtle with the Vietnamese. The Americans weren't subtle with the Vietnamese either. They destroyed their lives, their livelihoods. They raped their women. They took their children. They killed their babies. It's the same with Americans going over to Iraq in 2003. All of these things are exploitative in nature, and they went in guns blazing like the characters in this film do. It's blunt. It's a blunt instrument. And it's war, it's death, it's in front of you, and you can't. For me, I don't know what needs to be subtle about that, because it is meant to punch you in the face and take you on this ride in an hour and a half, and it does that so well for me. Like, honestly, the Native Americans had their numbers just plummeted. It's the same with the Aboriginals in Australia. Like the British went over and destroyed their culture and created their own, implemented their own rules and regulations of what England was over in Australia. And they did that so bluntly that they're still reeling from it today. It was so smash in your mouth and kill and rape that there's still huge implications for such these days, and it manifested itself in some really awful ways. So this film surely is a representation of that.
Yeah,
realism.
But it needs to be. Subtlety won't get the point across sometimes. He wanted to make a blunt film because he was angry.
Yeah, I mean, that's completely fine. He can make any film that he wants. But I think that, in my opinion, yeah, and again, his choice to make a blunt film is perfectly valid. But I think that, honestly, again, it's in my opinion, that even subject matters like that can be communicated subtly more effectively. Like, honestly, in my opinion, one of the best anti-war films ever made is Grave of the Fireflies. It's an animated film.
Yeah.
And it shows the aftermath. Like,
it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, it shows... it's like the Japanese perspective on World War II. Is it post the bomb? Is it?
Well,
can't remember now.
I can't remember, but it definitely touches on the fire bombings, which killed more people.
Yeah.
In Japan than the nuclear weapons did. Yeah.
I mean, like in terms of communicating a message, a very, 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 very bluntly, but tastefully. Something like that is more effective.
But there's nothing tasteful. There's nothing tasteful about.
Well, there's nothing tasteful about firebombing Japanese people.
No.
But only because it's from children's point of view in Grave of the Fireflies.
Yeah, I mean that's just one example. But what other anti-films are there?
But I don't think there's necessarily anything better about representing it in one way or another. It's about execution. It's not about whether subtlety is better or brutality is better. It's the execution that matters.
Yeah, I agree, and there's also nothing wrong with the brutality that was displayed on screen either. Like I said, some of it's not to my taste, but I got no inherent problem with that. I just think that the audience isn't given any benefit of the doubt. That's I suppose my issue with it. And again, yeah, sure, it's personal taste. But really,
it's challenging the audience in a different manner, right? Like it's doing the same thing. Challenging their sensibilities, and
he made this specifically for a Western audience as well to challenge.
It's not doing it in an intellectual manner. It's doing it in a forceful, graphic manner. But execution is the big thing. I don't think either of those is inherently better than the other.
Yeah, and I think his execution, assaulting the audience's kind of senses in the way. I think he's very effective. In terms of what he intended to do, it's the intention that I would disagree with, or would personally find to be less effective than a different way of going about doing it. I mean, the execution is good. I think. I do think it's good. I think it's effective in what it sets out to do. I just think what it's set out to do was flawed fundamentally, I suppose. That's what I think, anyway.
It's interesting. I understand completely where you're coming from. I can see why it might not lead into a personal taste as well. And normally I would probably agree with you as well, because, part of what I don't like about horror films sometimes is needless rape and needless gore and brutality. But within the context of this film, I think they are necessary and justified, because sometimes you can't shy away from the fact that women get raped in horrific circumstances like this within war, and women and children suffer in war scenarios because they are just there. There's nothing way around that. There's no subtlety.
Yeah, but you don't.
Within
it doesn't
the
have
loss
to be,
of them.
It doesn't have to be an exploitation film to broach sexual assault.
No, but I think this is an important film to add to the many other films that aren't exploitation films. I just think it's valid as any of the other films that aren't that, though, and it's one in a vast sea of films that aren't that. But this one is that, and I think that has merit to it.
Yeah,
that it can. It is expressing its artistic vision in the way it wants to, in the way that he knows how to, and that's his style. You may not like a Picasso painting because you don't like Picasso's style, but you don't go, if it was Van Gogh, if you've just done it like Van Gogh, I might have been more into it. It's just a style issue. It's nothing else you can do.
I think it's personal taste.
Yeah, it's personal.
I personally think that all of the exploitation elements reinforce the message, but you don't. But
I think it's horrific.
I think it's personal taste.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But it's what I love about it is very much like what this film does, right? Because if you do look on somewhere like IMDb or something, it's got very middling reviews, but is anything but a middling film.
Polarizing.
It's more divided.
Yeah. It's like on a 5 or a 6, somewhere around there. And you think, well, that's people either giving it a 10 or a 1. There's no real in between. It's like Marmite. You love it or hate it. Like it's so divisive. We get so hung up on the animal stuff because it is important. But yeah, it's a wild film. And I think that's why it's also important to now have a look at some of the production of it and the background of it, because I think that is part of this. We talked a lot about the plot and morals and things, but the actual production of this film and how it came about is really interesting. We've touched upon it with the idea of how the influence of Delato came about, and he grew up in the 1950s vibrant Italian movie industry. He was very lucky to become friends with the son of Roberto Rossellini, who's one of the biggest neo-realist directors of that time, of the golden age of Italian cinema. And he then was asked, in fact, by Rossellini to be involved in the making. He became an assistant director to him. He then had more credits, 40 credits in his first 8 years as an assistant director, went off in his own way, started creating his own films. He had a string of good luck early in his career, but he was able to work with some of these greats of the Italian cinema. His influences were Rossellini for his realism. He had Sergio Corbucci, who gave him the Cruelty, something like Django, a film like Django. And then you've got Jacopetti for cinematography, and he implemented all of this within his films. And this is what you can see in Cannibal Holocaust. His arguably masterpiece of a film, the one that lives the most internationally, is that. And obviously you've got the exploring taboos with the Mondo Carne films that came in the 70s as well. So you've got that area of taboo.
Boom period of Italian cinema from the 50s to the 60s to the 70s. Yeah. All kinds of different creative expression. You got the neorealism that you talked about. You got Giallo being a popularized genre and the slasher being born there. Yeah, I mean, it was just you got the spaghetti westerns gaining popularity. You got big kind of exploitation, action and horror movies being popularized. You got this kind of Mondo style that you're talking about. Yeah, 50s, 60s, 70s, in a similar way to the French New Wave was popular all over the world.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that there is a thing in this era about exploiting taboos and kind of putting a lot of nudity in cinema as well. So Cannibal Holocaust does this as well. There's something almost, a lot of people went to these Mondo Carnos not to watch a good movie, but to be turned on. There's something in there about that. It's
boundary pushing.
It's boundary pushing.
And there's multiple different boundaries being pushed, whether it's extremity or like social critique. And you're watching primitive people from afar, so you got this idea of watching the other, and watching these types like in a circus, almost.
Yeah, it's like being in a zoo, being able to look at these things from the comfort. Of
and of course, you're breaking sexual taboos within these films as well. You're breaking stuff to do with rape, to do with I guess with children and teenagers and then adults and women, and the idea that in this time period in Italy there was a big push for women in the workplace, and they're becoming more parative to men. And it's something actually that you find more and more so now in the West as well, obviously. But to go back to these sort of films where women are exploited, there's the exploitation and the objectification and the pleasure of seeing that from the perspective of a man losing their grip on society, that they're able to in some ways fantasize their killing and rape of women in a space where you are able to do that now. So Cannibal Holocaust, the men own the women. They're objects in a way. They're in a sense like she commits adultery, she dies. It's this idea of exploring those taboos, and these sort of films in that era were kind of doing that, but to the gratification of men as well.
And Faye, the Western woman, like tries to stop the rape and is disregarded.
I don't think that she tries to stop the rape for that reason, though.
To the latter part of that scene, she does. At first, all she gives a shit about for some reason is the
camera reels.
Yeah, but
I don't know. I mean, why do you think her reasoning changes?
Well, it's partially she's supposed to be dating one of them, right?
Yeah,
the main
one.
Alan. Yeah. So maybe it's all selfish.
I think there's
reasons.
jealousy. There might be genuinely she doesn't want the film to be used for that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what she says, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she makes a good point, right? If they've only got a few reels of film. Then...
Yeah, but that's not the reason to stop it.
And if
no, but that is a reason.
But in this, they're establishing the control of the women in that scene as well. It's that idea of playing with that within the film, and that rape isn't sexual. She's actually seeing this from an angle where she's seeing this rape as a sexual thing. Where she's almost being cheated on, when actually it's like an angry, aggressive. Rape isn't about sexual gratification.
Well, it's basically an imperialist move.
Yeah,
it's like an invasion. It's a
dominance.
Yeah,
it's animalistic, and that leads on to something else with the way I saw an argument in one of these. What are they? University types. But she argued that actually, when you look at this film, you could say that the killing of the animals is just because they couldn't kill women. The animals are there in place of women because they can't get away with that within the society.
Well, you mean the filmmakers wanted? She's claiming that the filmmakers.
Yeah, I'm not saying that was the. They're not. That's subconscious. They're not saying that's consciously an effort.
Well,
they're
it's
doing.
Inherent destruction, isn't it? Destruction of everything for personal gratification.
But an idea that they cannot really get away with killing women on screen, but they can with animals. This idea that women and animals are seen on a level playing field within this film. One is used in a way. For as an object for pleasure and for birthing children, and the other one is for food. They're all very animalistic instincts.
Yeah, just taking things when you want to take them.
Yeah.
Definite theme. Yeah.
And male dominated within that. But yeah, so this film in the background and where it came from is incredible, and the things you can look into the film. I do always find that interesting that Diodato says things about how it's become more taboo to think and talk about death and to depict death, and when he was growing up it was just a natural part of life, and he says at the time on television we were all seeing death scenes. There were years of terrorism. My film was also a commendation of certain types of journalism, as we've explored, but it's the idea that his ideas for it came out of that, and he was able to kind of bring it to life because of all of this stuff in the neo-realism films of 50s, 60s, 70s, and the taboo-breaking Italian film industry.
Yeah, the Battle of Algiers is a movie I'll champion that I'm guessing neither of you've seen.
No.
But that's an absolute masterpiece because it's about the kind of independence of Algeria and the fight against the French. And that's one of the first movies I'm aware of, if not the first, that takes such an aggressive realism approach to brutal situations. So you follow some French military officers and you also follow some Algerian people that live there, that engage in these, according to the French, the military officers, terrorist activities. So they smuggle bombs through like checkpoints and explode buildings and kill French people, tourists, and so on. And that kind of thing wasn't shown before. This was 1966, and this is an evolution from that, right? It's kind of like showing you things that you need to see because this is what happens in the world. This is not the movies. This is real life. Okay, it is the movies, but it's presented in such a way that it's analogous to what you see on your news network, but from the point of view of not the newsman with his microphone. It's from the point of view of the people that actually live there.
I mean, I find his style of the way he develops a film. I really admire it. I admire
Deodato.
Yeah, the way he's able to create a film. He has a very brief outline, a few bits, and he basically had a few of the main plot points and then worked around that and created this film out of nothing, basically. You know, they didn't even know where they were going to film. They all went out there and went, this town looks good. This is a good place to film this in the Amazon. And so they did it there. They did the things, you know, like
It's what a lot of the best filmmakers did. Like Francis Ford Coppola did that to no end in Apocalypse Now.
You know, it's incredible that he did do that. I mean, it's amazing that he was able to take it to these areas. Letizia, it's an outpost on the edge of the Amazon. It was chosen on a whim. And it's quite amazing that he just was able to do that and then start filming in that area. You know, and it's a film which was shot chronologically. And apart from the arrival at the Amazon, I don't know if you know when they say that they had a tan. So Carl York says if you look closely at the beginning of the film, where they're getting on the plane to go out there, he has a great tan, and then the first scene you see him in later on in the film, he's pale. Right. So that's the only thing they really shot out of sync, whereas really you don't shoot films like that. But with this one, because they did it all on a whim, it's very much as it happened, and you see that. And there's only one scene that's not in the film, and that was about the piranhas. If you know about the piranhas.
Yeah, I saw that on the trivia, yeah.
It's quite funny. Like, they were like just dead, and it just didn't work. So that's the only thing apparently he really kind of took out of it. But otherwise, yeah, it was quite incredible. And then the way there's no obvious edits with things, so he talks very much about the way he filmed it, like the leg cutting off. Instead of, a lot of films would have a far away shot, and then the cut would be up to the leg, which is quite an obvious fake edit. Whereas he wanted it flowing around, free flowing, janky movements. So there's no obvious edits within that.
Yeah,
and
it's
it
the birth
looks
of fan
real.
footage cinema is what that is. One of the core tenets that makes it so successful.
And so it's quite incredibly made, and I admire his filming style. No matter what the content is, the actual filming style and him as a filmmaker is
the cinematography
incredible.
Direction is impeccable.
In both halves, I think he recreates the style perfectly, right? Like I think a straight documentary at the beginning, and then really recreating this idea of actually finding unedited footage in the second half. Like I think both of them are like flawlessly presented. And it being so early in fan footage is just insane.
Well, basically nothing was added to that formula today, I don't think. There's nothing that is done now that improves upon the fan footage formula that he does in this movie.
the clue's in the name, right? You can't do too much to it. Like he got it in one, pretty much, right?
Yeah. Way better than Legend of Boggy Creek as well. So
probably. I don't know. I don't remember anything about that film.
Maybe we'll cover it.
Yeah.
But he just really says, so we'll go to post when it was meant to go into the cinema in Italy. And they say this is when he says the United Artists made a great deal of errors within that. They put the posters up on the corners, street corners, and people hated it. They were meant to distribute it across Italy, but it got picked up by the Italian censors, and that is because he says here the premiere happened in an unfriendly city with an authoritative edge, which was Milan. So the police in Milan picked it up, and they basically went no, and they started court proceedings off, and the film then started costing much more. In fact, the fees and they had 6 top barristers, cost them so much more money than the film costs. It was like 300 million lire, as opposed to about 100 million lire that was made to make the film.
And is this just for the obscenity charges or for all the charges?
This is for everything. So they had a 6-month suspended sentence they ended up with. They lost the court case and ended up with a suspended sentence and a hefty fine.
Yeah, but at the same time, they're being made an example of because of success. They weren't the only movie to be making scenes such as the ones in the movie at the time in Italy. It's just the one that had a lot of success. And even with the poster, I would argue there's a lot of posters from that time period that are maybe not as extreme as Cannibal Holocaust, but there's definitely posters that you wouldn't put up today in a bus station for children to see and so on. So yeah, I mean, it sucks.
Yeah. No,
yeah. It's a victim of success, right? It's having your movie be so successful that a government wants to step in and stop your success.
Well, okay,
because it frowns upon and like what you're becoming successful for.
I mean, this is like exploitation film Oscars, right? This is what you want. Like,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it said again, this was the best thing that could have happened. By banning it, you make everyone want to see it. Because of that curiosity that people have.
An argument could be made that this movie, or even Texas Chainsaw, wouldn't be ubiquitous. Everybody knows the name of it if they're plugged into horror.
I mean, look in the way that The Simpsons exploded after the president said that we want our families to be more like, was it the Jetsons or something, rather than the Simpsons?
Like the Simpsons,
yeah. It's like if an authoritative figure out there
tells you you can't,
you want to.
It's like the Sex Pistols, right? For music.
Yeah.
Every single media type has a huge swathe of pieces of media that have become successful purely because people were told you can't do this, you can't watch this, you can't listen to this, so people want to. And I also follow that. I think everybody does.
Yeah, there's something innate, I think, in like human nature.
Yeah.
So I mean, so you say that it was a victim of success, but it was confiscated very quickly. So how was it successful? Like, why was that the one that was made an example of? I mean, I don't know the timeline.
Well,
so,
it made a huge amount of money in a short amount of time.
And then it got suppressed.
Could have made a lot more money.
No, yeah. No, so it wasn't immediate. Like
when it was going to hit its prime, it was just about to hit its prime. It got taken away and suppressed and
it was
told.
a few weeks, right?
But they
wide release in Italy.
But they were told to destroy all copies of it. They were told never to show it again, and it became an underground movie from that point. So all of that success it had, no one had access to it anymore. You know, or so you would think, because it was suppressed. You know, he says later he would find out that people for all this time had been watching it, but just weren't talking about it because it's such a taboo film. That book, I was reading that book, and I was sort of in a public-ish place. I'm like, I don't want people to walk in while I'm reading this. Like, Christ almighty. So it still holds that taboo today. There's still that within it. You know, he says that the film brought me good luck and bad luck. He thinks it's a masterpiece still, Deodato. He still thinks it's a masterpiece. He says it was very successful in initial release in Italy, but confiscated soon after. But it never got the buzz again that it had when it was re-released years later. The buzz that it would have had, the success it would have on to have internationally, was never completely fulfilled. It was never given across to the British, the BFCC. It's never had a theatrical release over here. It was unrated because they knew they weren't going to get it passed. There was no way on earth. They just didn't even bother because it just wouldn't have made it over here. So, but he does have interesting views there on like we said about the animal cruelty, about how he feels about the film still, or did, sorry, until he died. And he sort of talks about how when it was released, people loved it because there was no mass globalization and people didn't travel to those areas. So it got picked up by United for European rights. He was told he could do anything he liked, so and improvised it. He improvised the idea of filming in what films. He started filming in 35mm film and ended up going to 16mm. And with his production, post-production, he scratched some of the film. He would scratch the film, and you know those cuts you see, like when they're all being pillaged at the end and stuff. He scratched them all and exposed it to damage it, and it created this realistic image. When actually, if you think about it, it was brand new film, and it wouldn't have any sort of roughness or grittiness to it.
Yeah, it needs artificial aging,
but it made it look great. So nobody actually thought about it, but it was an illusion, and it made it more realistic looking in a weird. Actually, even though it wasn't realistic looking, it made it more realistic looking in people's minds. So this is all stuff that helped the Italian censors make the decision they came to. It was so realistic looking, taking him to court and everything like that. And it wasn't until Blair Witch came out years later that this one newspaper, Il Manifesto, they hated it. They disparaged it. They couldn't stand it and said it was perverse.
Well, Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah. And when Blair Witch came out, that same paper did a 2-page spread of what a genius it was.
Yeah,
so,
it's the classic story, right? It's like Peep and Tom all over again. It's something so ahead of its time that it's not appreciated. It's not. It's thought of as something that it's not, I guess. Yeah. And if you put it in its time, there was a lot of movies that are as reprehensible as this. But again, this was the successful one, so this is the one that gets paid in a certain way. And it was successful not because of the extremity, but because of the fact that it's a good movie and it's, treated in a way that actually makes sense, the extremity in the movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, initially it was obscenity, right, that he was charged with. But then
they drummed it up, basically.
Yeah. Well, because he made the actors sign contracts, right, that they weren't allowed to appear in any other media apparently for 12 months.
Yeah.
Just to kind of fuel he knew what he was doing, right? Like he was fueling
the word of mouth,
fueling this fire deliberately.
He wanted the controversy. Yeah.
And
maybe not to get sued in the way he did. You don't know, but
well,
to add
I
that
don't
doubt
know.
isn't so bad. But to be sued for your art.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, if you tell actors to not appear in anything for 12 months, why else are you getting them to do that? If not to convince people that they're dead.
Yeah,
and if
it might be spreading rumors, not convincing the authorities that they're dead. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a good marketing maneuver to get yourself in that kind of situation, because even if this movie was a piece of garbage, I'd have gone back and watched it if it was the movie that got the court case where the guy was tried with murder.
Yeah, hell yeah. I mean,
that's a huge selling point.
That was
of it
literally
now.
the first thing I heard about it was that, and I think he knew what he was doing.
He definitely was.
I think more accurately, I think he was willing to go all the way and go to court and pay the fines. I mean, yeah, maybe he was hoping that it would just be word of mouth and that would be enough and it would still kind of aid the marketing. But I think, I mean, if you've got essentially going to simulate a snuff movie to that, to that length, that they can't appear in anything for 12 months.
But he's not simulating a snuff movie. You got to get right the genre he works within. It's neo-realism, not snuff. He's not that type of director, but he is part of it.
No, but he went to the effort of making the actors stay out of the public eye for 12 months.
Yeah, but snuff is merely the label for death on film, right?
Yeah.
So he was trying to convince people that these people actually died.
Okay, it's an artful
Yes,
snuff
I don't.
film.
I would argue that artistically, he probably didn't think ahead that far.
Why else would he do it? Why else would he put it in the contract?
I mean, the Blair Witch did the same thing, but
Yeah.
they didn't get all of the negative aspects of like financial difficulties.
I don't think he was willing to go to court for it. I think he was willing for the general public to go, oh, where have they gone? What's happened to these people?
It's a marketing thing.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily think that an artist, by doing that, is thinking about the authorities picking it up and suppressing their piece of art.
Well, it was suppressed ostensibly for the obscenity, and it remains suppressed because of the obscenity, which was true. However, the snuff allegations were false, and they were dropped. Right?
Yeah, and if it was only it
wasn't suppressed because of the
snuff elements, then
if
it would have been a big win for
exactly.
it.
If it was only brought up on snuff, and then it was proven to be false, then it would have been.
But you're just saying that the idea of them being out of the public eye was because he said
marketing.
He was willing to go to court.
Yeah, marketing. Yeah, I think
but
so.
He's not willing to go to court, and he'll make no money on the film. And when it's having its biggest...
To go to court for the deliberate decision.
He
not for
knew that
obscenity,
they'd always win the snuff case.
Yeah, but not
the others. Which makes me think he didn't want to go to court, which would be
they're
ridiculous.
Two separate things, and they're completely distinct. Like, the obscenity thing, he has no control over what is perceived as obscene. Like, he made the choices to play in what he did. And I'm sure that he definitely didn't want to get brought up on obscenity charges. Because that is...
Well, certainly didn't want to lose on obscenity charges.
And which he did do, because there isn't, I mean, what kind of case can you make, right?
Mm.
But the snuff, like, that stuff was definitely marketing. Like, if it only got to word of mouth, that's one thing. But to go to court and know that you've won...
That's massive marketing.
Brilliant marketing.
That's like 10 out of 10.
And it wasn't until Blair Witch that people started to really take notice within his own country, within Italy, that people started to actually see him as a genius, as someone who was ahead of his time.
And it's insane that it was 19 years.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you would think 5 years later, people would have been like, well, I mean, I saw that excellent movie, Cannibal Holocaust. Why don't I make a whole movie based on the most extreme bit, which is the fan footage element?
And the messaging...
Seemingly nobody did until 19 years later. That's crazy. Yeah.
The messaging of the film remains intact as well with this Cannibal Holocaust film. The idea that the white people go and destroy indigenous people's, or just people's lives.
Yeah. The tale as old as time.
Yeah, and it continues to be a violence. So that's what I leave with this film.
Mm.
And I didn't think I'd really like it, but
I actually didn't think you would like it.
Yeah,
so
I wasn't expecting you to
I'm
like
very
it
happy
either.
that you did.
Yeah, no, I think it's a bit of a masterpiece. I think it's a special film made within its own time. It wouldn't be made today, and good.
Yeah. I don't often give 10 out of 10s to horror movies,
but
for whatever reason.
Yeah, this one is right up there.
Yeah, I'd say, I
I
top
like
20 horror movies, 30 horror movies of all time.
Yeah. I mean, I watch a lot of things like war documentaries and stories and most like horrific real world things that happen. And these things bother me a lot. And today, like what's happening with Hamas, Gaza and Israel and Lebanon and Ukraine and Russia and all this stuff, to me, is the most horrific, is on my mind a lot about where the world is going. And this film kind of depicts that within its art. And what it does. So for me, if a film unnecessarily puts in violence and rape, and it isn't necessary to force home a message, then it's not worth it. But this film really, this film is worth the message it creates. If we ever
cover Sarlo, it would be interesting to see whether you like that.
Yeah, that was my thought as well.
Yeah, because again, that's another movie with horrendous material in it. But the context, I would argue, justifies the material.
Definitely.
And it's also extremely well made as well.
And the behind the scenes is like...
even more insane than this movie.
Yeah. No, but everyone got on, I think. It was pretty good stuff behind the scenes. Somehow they kept each other in good spirits doing that film.
Yeah, but the mafia connection and the borrowing of money and
mate,
the murders. What about the murders, mate?
That just makes it cooler.
Yeah.
I just think after all the stuff we see in real war documentaries and what's happening in the world today and what was happening in the world when he thought of making this film, it's as important now as it was then. And it's after you've seen on, never mind actually seeing it in person, because that would be incredibly torturous and horrific, but seeing the clips in these World War II documentaries of the aftermath of the Holocaust, with the plough just going through tens of thousands of dead bodies of the Jewish people. You know, that's more horrific than anything this film could ever depict to me.
But we're also 21st century desensitized by media people, right? So 1980 is one thing, but also before that, right? So the impact of seeing...
I'm not saying this didn't impact me in such a visceral way either. I'm just saying...
Yeah, we're only tip of the iceberg of the impact this would have had in 1980 and the kind of things that you're talking about with the Holocaust would have had in the 50s and late 40s. So we can only imagine that.
Although you say that things, we're more desensitized now, but then the 50s, 60s, and 70s of the Italian film industry, we're in its prime. They're
called the years of bullets, aren't they, in Italy anyway? Because the mafia and the police were basically at war throughout the 70s in Italy, and there was like terrorist bombings and stuff, and innocent people were killed in the 70s. Like the 70s was a very dark time in Italy anyway, outside of movies. So
if you look at the era of people who created this film and who was alive then, a lot more of them have probably seen death and destruction on their doorstep than what we have today. So they may be desensitized more now. We may be desensitized more now when it comes to media and having it on our screens and by a touch of a button, but they saw a lot of it in real life throughout, and
but audience dependent though.
Audience dependent, but it's just a different.
Everybody has to see it unless they ignore the world.
Considering, I don't like this sort of stuff normally. I was like very impressed.
Yeah,
10 out
I'm
of
quite
10
happy
type
that
film.
you enjoyed it. Yeah,
but because I can see the artistic merit to it.
Yeah,
I don't want rape for no reason. I don't want it just because it shocks me and that's its justification, which is probably why in a way we don't like the animal killing in this, because it is shock for shock's sake.
Yeah.
Whereas the sort of the way rape is depicted within the film, the way the white man is depicted is very realistic.
Yeah, regardless of what it is, if it's cheap graphic nonsense, it's not really going to get any credit from me. So
all right, all good. Do we feel scarred from? I feel very scarred after Cannibal Holocaust.
Nah, man, I love this movie.
I think we're now thoroughly shattered. After that,
5 to 12, in fact.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, midnight, not 5 to 12 in the morning.
No.
So hope you enjoyed that. Is that the right word?
You're breaking into song like Joker 2.
A wispy cannibal.
The cannibal is me.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
See you later.